Chang. Today I'm going to read through the full rules of peer-to-peer. So some people like to listen to the rules, so I'm going to actually read through all the rules for you. So playing cards. Playing cards first, which is the motivation for the tech deck, first started in the 9th century AD in China, along with woodblock printing. They came to Europe by way of the Mamluk Empire through a game called Naive. At first, hand-printed cards with inscriptions, with courtly cards, a king and lieutenants. And from there, they spread to the rest of Europe. And by the time they came in 1370, and by 1377, the suits that we've come to know and love, hearts, diamonds, clubs, and spades, are adopted by the French, and there they've remained for 643 years. So that's the motivation for the tech deck. The tech deck is composed of 4 suits: knowledge, which is knowledge and facts and information accumulated by science, is a theoretical and practical understanding of a subject, foundational to science and technology. The science, or the beaker, is science is organized knowledge with testable explanations. The natural sciences, biology, chemistry, and physics, study nature, and the social sciences, economics, psychology, and sociology, focus on societies. Formal sciences, logic, mathematics, and computer sciences for abstract concepts. And the technology, the gear, for industry and manufacturing. Technology is the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes. Engineering is the creative application of science to math and design and construction of machines, systems, and processes. And finally, the last domain or suit, services, which is represented by a globe, is the integration of knowledge, science, and technology to create a product to benefit customers, services providing a benefit or product to a customer. So the peer-to-peer game, the motivation for that is, considering in the 21st century, I mean, many power of the people technologies have arisen. In the late 1990s, nobody would have given anybody, a stranger, a lift. But now with Uber and Lyft, people pay complete and total strangers to drive them around. In 1768, the Encyclopedia Britannica was started, but by the year 2000, Nupedia, which eventually became Wikipedia, is a peer-to-peer encyclopedia where most people go to look up things now. And it overtook traditional paper encyclopedias. On many other industries, such as retail, eBay, and Etsy, to hotels like Airbnb, are empowering people to help each other out. And peer-to-peer, such as in YouTube, technologies, sharing, ride sharing, and e-learning are just a few of the areas that peer-to-peer services have developed. So in this unique team deck building game, players team up together to build a team deck by gaining cards and assisting customers represented by cards. Each player has a venture composed of tech deck venture cards, which have special effects that give each player unique abilities that can grow and change over time. Peer-to-peer can also be played head-to-head or solo play as well. So it supports from 1 to 6 players. The playing time is 20 to 60 minutes. Ages 7 above. It requires some addition and reading, and there's 54 cards in the tech deck. Okay, so how to start is, for a 1-player game, you're just going to have 1 team. But for a 2, 4, or 6-player game, you want to randomly divide your players into 2 groups. And for an odd number of players, 3 or 5-player game, you'll still have 2 teams, but one of the teams will have an odd number of players, and you'll compensate for that by giving them an extra venture. The team with 1 fewer player will basically have an extra venture to compensate, and so effectively you're playing still a 2-team game. So what you're going to do is you're going to deal the team cards out. You're going to take the tech deck, and this is a blown up version of the tech deck. Can you give me a tech deck just so I can show people? So basically you'll shuffle up the cards. So an actual tech deck, this is an actual tech deck, obviously it's printed card size, and so this is blown up for video purposes. So you're going to shuffle up the tech deck, and basically what you're going to do is deal out cards until you deal out you're going to look for these cards that have the venture symbol on them. So you're going to shuffle the deck, deal out cards until you reveal 2 venture cards for each player in a team, then repeat that for the second team. So for example, suppose you have 2 people, 2 versus 2, you're going to deal out until you find 4 cards, like so. Okay. And because there's in a 2 versus 2, you'll deal out 4 cards. Then each player selects 1 venture card to start the game with, so you'll end up playing with 2 of the cards in a 2 versus 2 game. And as I said before, the venture cards have that little venture symbol here in the game text box. You'll shuffle the rest of the cards back with the group symbol, so the cards that you didn't use were all the cards with the little group symbol. There's only 2 symbols you need to know in the game, the group symbol and the venture symbol. So you shuffle all those back into the deck. So basically, if in a 4-player game, you'll have had 2 people with each. I'm just going to randomly put. So in a 2v2 game, 2 people will have 2 people each will have 1 venture. Okay. In a 5 or 6-player game, you'll have people each with, you'll have, say, okay. So in a 5 or 6-player game, of course, you would each player would also still have 1 venture that they would have. Okay. Each team deals out cards until they reveal, like for example, in a 5-player game, each team deals out cards until they reveal 6 venture cards, then each player selects 1 venture to start the game with. The next thing you're going to do is create the team group decks, and they look like this, and in the rules, they look like that. Okay. So the rules tell you how to create the team 2 team decks. So team 1, and I've already pulled them out for you. So one team will have this as their starting group deck, and another team will have this as their starting group deck. So you'll have the 1 of service, 2 of information, the 1 of science, the 4 of technology, and the 3 of service as one team deck, and the other will be the 1 of information, the 3 of information, the 2 of science, the 1 of technology, and the 4 of service is their other one. Now if you're playing a solo game, you're going to start with 2 1s, 1 2, 1 3, and 1 4, and of all different kinds, and then remove the remaining 1s, 2s, and 3s from the customer deck. Okay, so your initial group hands, you draw the initial group hand by basically shuffling up your group deck to create the group deck. Each team will be shuffling up their group deck, and I'm just going to lay it out here so that you can kind of see what it looks like here. So suppose we have, these are, let's say, players, right? Okay, so these are 2 players, Mr. Black and Mr. Orange versus Mr. Brown and Mr. Green. They're going to shuffle up their decks. You're going to draw 4 cards, and that'll form their group hand. That's a shared hand between the 2 players. I'll do the same here. And that'll be their group hand. This is their group deck, and there's nothing in their discards. These are each of the players' ventures. So then you're going to take the remaining cards and shuffle them to form the group deck. Place the customer deck between the 2 teams. You're going to just shuffle these up. Right. Okay. Place them between the 2 teams like that, and deal out 2 cards into the customer row and next to the customer deck. This represents customers that need to be assisted at the start of the game. Next, you'll have a first team marker, so randomly determine 1 team to go first. And once you've done that, you've reached this stage of the rules. It looks like this. So you have basically 2. In this case, I've shown a diagram with 2 versus 2. So you see here they each have their ventures. This is their group hand, their group deck. There's nothing in the group discard. The customer deck cards in the customer row, and there's no unhappy customers to start the game with. So phases in a turn. Each round is composed of phases, of 6 phases. The first phase is new customers. You deal out new customers into the row to form the customer from the customer deck, which we just did. Players can then use group ventures and group effects. Players can use effects from their venture cards or cards in their hand with the group symbol. Then number 3, teams use group cards from their group hand to assist customers, and we'll go over that in a bit. Number 4, you can use ventures and group effects. Players can use game effects after assisting customers phase if they still have any effects available to use. Number 5, you refresh the group hand, discard any remaining unused cards in the group hand, and redraw 4 cards. And then 6, the end of round phase, where the game end trigger is checked, first team marker is passed. So in the new customer phase, number 1, you put new customers into the customer row, drawing from the customer deck. The number of customers put into the row depends on the number of players and team score. For a 1-player game, you put 1 customer per turn until you score 2 customers. Thereafter, you add 2 customers per turn. For a 2- or 4-player game, you put 2 customers in per turn until one team scores 2 assisted customers, and thereafter you put in 3 customers per turn. And for a 5- or 6-player game, you always put in 3 new customers in per turn. You add new customers to the center row by drawing new cards from the customer deck, adding them to the rightmost side of the customer row that is closest to the customer deck, sliding the existing cards to the left, and the customer row can hold up to 4 customers. So unhappy customers. If a 5th customer would be added to the row, remove the leftmost oldest customer and it becomes an unhappy customer. And if there are too many unhappy customers, the game ends during the game end check phase. So the next phase is use ventures and group card effects phase. Number 1, use venture effects. So cards with the venture symbol indicate that it's a player venture effect that must be part of a player venture in order to be used. Each player can use the game effects from their venture cards once per turn. Venture effects may be used before, during, or after assisting customers. Venture effects are optional, never mandatory. Starting with a team that has the first team marker, they can use and resolve a venture group card effect. Then the other team has a chance to play an effect, and you continue until neither team wishes to play any further effects. Teams may also use group card effects of group cards in the group hand. These are denoted by the little hand symbol there in the text box. The effect of a group card can be used once per turn. So if you've chosen to use in the effects phase before assisting customers, you can't use that effect later after assisting customers. If the card effect states a phase when it can be used, then it must be used in that phase. A card can only be used once per turn, even if it leaves the group hand and later returns to the group hand. You can flip over or tap cards that have been used to keep track. Some cards have both a I'll show you. Some cards have both a venture symbol and a group symbol, and that indicates that it can be used either in the group hand or as part of a venture. So typically a venture will describe what phase it can be used. If it's not specified, then it can be used during the use card effects phase. For example, a game effect may specify that it triggers when assisting customers. This would mean that it would be used during the assist customers phase. Number 4, chaining abilities. So it's possible that after one ability is used, it may open the opportunity to use new game effects during a turn. So for example, a card returned from the group discard could be used immediately if there are multiple effects that may take place at the same time. The team may choose the order in which the effects are resolved. Effects cannot be interrupted while another effect is in progress. Number 5, do as much as possible. If a game effect is unable to be completely executed, do as much as possible. So for example, if a game effect has you draw 2 cards, draw 2 group cards, and then discard 2 group cards, for example, the 12 of information, but you can only draw 1 card because there's, say, only 1 card in the group deck, and none to discard, you would draw 1 card, then discard 2 cards. So in the next phase, the assist customer phase, you follow these sequence of steps during the assist customer phase. Number 1, you play group cards to assist customers. So the way you do that is So basically, what you want to do is match the number and symbol. So let's see. So for example, 4 plus 2 plus 1 is 7, and at least one of the cards matches the symbol. So both teams play group cards face down with their intention to assist customers, and I'll just pick something here. Like that, maybe. Okay. So both teams play cards face down with the intention to assist a customer card in the customer row. To assist a customer, one or more group cards must sum exactly to the value of the customer you're trying to assist, and at least one of the symbols on those group of cards match. For example, to assist 13 technology card, 11 service, and 2 technology card could be used to assist the customer. Note, the only way that a single card could be used to assist a customer is if a game effect that changes, if you have a game effect that changes the domain of the card. Number 2, you reveal the cards. So starting with the team that does not have the first player marker, they would reveal their group cards and declare the customer that they're going to assist. Then the other team reveals their group cards and announces which customer they want to assist. Number 3, use game effects. If there are venture or group hand effects that occur when assisting customers, they occur at this time. Game effects may only be used once per turn, and you can flip or tilt the card to assist to help you remember the effect has already been used. Venture effects may only be used when it is part of a venture, and if a player venture has a game effect that happens while assisting a customer, it happens in step 3A. So 3B, some cards have the group symbol, as we've said before, and that means that it can be used while a card is in the group hand. If a group hand effects occurs while assisting customers, it happens in step 3B. As contested customers, if both teams want to assist the same customer, the customer is said to be contested. To resolve the conflict, compare the group cards of both teams. The team with the highest value group card wins the customer. So in this case, though, they both match numerically perfectly, 421 and 421. The team with the highest value group card wins the customer. If that's tied, then compare the next highest value card. If all the card values are tied, then the following domain orders ranked highest to lowest are used to resolve the tie. So service is highest, followed by technology, followed by science, followed by information. So in this case, because of all the numbers are tied, the 4 of service is highest, and that would win that team this card. So number 5, you can develop the group deck. So a successfully assisted customers are normally scored into the team's score pile or venture. If you have a game effect that lets you add a successfully assisted customer to the group deck, group hand, or group discard, it can be used in step 5. So for example, the 4 of service, this team won this card. After this card is used to assist the customer, it may be added to the group discard. Otherwise, you may not normally add an assisted customer to the group deck, hand, or discard, but you'll find once you play the game, you'll find that you'll have the choice quite often because of the cards that let you add cards to your group deck. So number 6, develop player ventures. The group cards used to assist a customer are placed into the winning team's group discard. Successfully assisted customers may be moved to the venture of one team player, and in a 1 to 4 player game, any player's venture can support up to 3 venture cards. In a 5 or 6 player game, a venture card can support only 2 ventures. If a venture limit would be exceeded, the venture is added, and then one of them is moved into the team's score area. A card added to the player's venture can also be used later in the same turn. So for example, this team won this customer, they assisted successfully, they can add it to one of their players' team venture. So we'll add it to Mr. Brown's team venture, so he now has 2 cards to be able to use. Number 7, score customers. If the assisted customer card is not placed into the player's venture, it's placed into the winning team's score pile. So you create a score pile, and that scores 1 point during scoring. Okay. Then number 8, return group cards. If there was a contested customer, the losing team's group cards are returned to the losing team's group hand, and they have a chance in that same round to use those group cards later to assist any remaining customers in the customer row. Number 9, use group adventure effects. Teams have a chance to use group adventure effects in between assisting customers. The addition of cards to the group discard and new venture cards may open up a possibility to use new effects. So number 10, repeat processes 1 through 9 to assist remaining customers in the customer row until neither team wants to further assist customers. So we can see this diagram in the rule book illustrates an example of assisting a customer. You have a customer card in the customer row. The 11 and 2 sum to 13 with at least one of the cards having a technology symbol. And this figure illustrates what happens after you've successfully assisted a customer. When you successfully assisted a customer, number 1, it could go into a player's venture, it could go into your score pile, or if you have a card that lets you add it to your group deck or group discard, then you have the choice to do that as well. So next, the next phase is refreshing the group hand phase. You discard all of the cards that are still in the group hand are discarded into the group discard, like so, and and then a new hand of cards is drawn. 4 new group cards are drawn into each group hand for each team. So if there are not enough cards in the group deck, there was only 1 in this case, you would shuffle the team group discard to create a new a new group deck and draw until you have 4 cards. Like so. Have the other team cut your deck after shuffling, because with very few cards, of course, it's good to cut. Okay, then then continue drawing cards until the 4 cards in the group hand. Now each team has 4 cards in their group hand. And finally, the last phase is the end of round phase. At the end of round phase, you check to see if you've reached the end of the game. So the game ends with all players losing, all teams losing, if there's a number of unhappy customers in the player area according to this table. So in a solo game, you can have up to 4 unhappy customers. In a 2-player game, you can have 3 unhappy customers. In a 3 to 4-player game, you can have 2 unhappy customers. In a 5 to 6-player game, you can only have 1 unhappy customer. Number 2, the end of game trigger. If there are no cards in the customer deck during the end of game trigger, you've gone through the entire customer deck, then the game ends and you would proceed to end game scoring. Number 3, an end of game scoring. The team that scored the most successfully assisted customers in their score pile would win. Each successfully scored customer scores 1 point. If there's a tie, sum the value of all your scored customers as a tiebreaker, and if there's still a tie, use the domain rank as a tiebreaker, the service, technology, science, and information as ranks. And next, if the game did not end, then the first team marker is passed to the next team. So you can see these diagrams here describe the end of game trigger, where if there's too many unhappy customers, the game would end, or the customer deck runs out. And this diagram in the rulebook also shows what happens at end of game scoring. Each team counts their number of scored customers, and then you would compare that, and if there's the same number of scored customers, you would sum the values to resolve the tie. So there's a few general rules. So number 1, reshuffling. If a game effect requires you to draw or reveal cards and there are not enough cards in the group draw deck, to do so, then shuffle the team group discard pile together with what is left of the group deck to form a new group deck. So for example, if you need to reveal 4 cards in the group deck, but there's fewer than 4 cards in the group deck, you would create a new group deck and reveal as many cards as you can. Then continue with the game effect. If there's still not enough cards in the group deck to reveal the requested cards, reveal as many as possible. Number 2, group talk. So group discussion and collaboration is encouraged. Players may discuss what the best strategy is and plays are given the current group hand and the other team's ventures and the customer cards in the customer row. Teams can coordinate and make deals or choose not to. No deal is binding and you don't have to say the truth. Number 3, looking at piles. Any player can look through either team's group discard. So if there were discards, either team could look through those freely. And the assisted customer score pile. So if you had, if one team had a number of assisted customers, you could freely look through each team's assisted customer score pile. This is public information. Number 4, revealing. When a card asks you to reveal a card, turn them over and expose the card for all players to see. After the game effects resolves, the revealed cards are returned from where they came, preserving the order that they had. So for example, if something would reveal the top 2 cards of the customer deck, you would reveal them and preserve the customer order. If a card allows you to look at something not revealed to all players, a person or team may choose to divulge that information, and a revealed card is turned over long enough for all players to acknowledge that they saw the card, but it doesn't have to be re-revealed later. Number 5, expelling. A card that is expelled is completely removed from the game. Number 6, exchanging 2 cards causes 2 players to swap places, putting each where the other card was. So for example, exchanging from the top of the customer deck with a card in the group hand would cause the top card of the customer deck to change places with the card in the group hand. Solo play. The only special rules for solo play are the initial deck composition. You just have one venture to work with, though, and you make all of the critical decisions. Because you have fewer game effects, you might use, you're allowed to have more unhappy customers. So thus in a solo game, you're allowed to have up to 4 unhappy customers. Solo plays does allow you to discover the deeper strategy of the game, though, and become familiar with the gameplay. There's also a variant called the individual decks variant, where players can play a variant where each player has their own deck, and it can be used from 2 to 6 players. Everybody who's playing will need 1 tech deck for every person playing, and 1 customer deck. You set up the group deck for each player in the same as the solo game, except that they also start with any 2 cards of their choice from their personal tech deck in their personal group deck. The group deck of each player will start with 7 cards. Players can also choose any 2 ventures from their personal tech deck to start the game with, and you can play as a semi-cooperative game, except that each player has their own personal group deck that they're building up. An alternative is that you can shuffle together multiple tech decks and have all the players draft the cards, leaving at least 40 cards for a customer deck. And strategy tips. Number 1, you don't necessarily need a very large group deck. The theoretical minimum solo playing deck is 6 cards, scoring a maximum of 40 assisted customers. Number 2, when you put customer cards into the group deck, generally mid to lower value cards are more useful. Try to gain cards that have useful and synergistic group effects. A variety of domains and values will help you assist different kinds of customers in the customer row. The player venture effects are important. Try to establish a useful venture for every player. Find game effects that complement each other. Remember, number 4, remember this is a cooperative game, and there will be times where it's necessary to cooperate so that everyone doesn't lose. But watch out. It's also possible for one team to start pulling ahead by scoring customers. There's a balance between developing a group deck, player ventures, and scoring customers. Number 5, the information domain card typically relate to drawing. All the blue cards, all the information cards relate to drawing. All of the science cards have effects which generally affect values and domains. The technology cards affects things in the group hand or group deck. And service cards focus on dealing with things in the customer row. So for more information, you can always see the Board Game Geek entry. We have on YouTube walkthrough videos, and you can visit my website at cheung.innerzone.com. So as final credits, I was the designer and developer, Ben Cheung. I had playtesters, Rich Kopaz, Lillian Mondero, Vincent Mondero, Ben Torcivia, Pedro Ortiz, Mike Klinkowski, Matthew David, David Fu, Cliff Field, Eugene Koo, Gabriel Horn, Holden Horn, Stefan Tekash, Michael Kornichuk, Joe Kwiatek, Henry Young, Craig Copen, and a video crew at Arnold Berkowitz, Isaac Arnold Berkowitz, Andrew Parks, Rich Kopaz, Mike Kornichuk, and Pedro Ortiz. All right, so terms and definitions. Number 1, assisting. When group cards are used to score or put customers into player ventures during the assist customer phase. To assist, group cards must exactly equal the value of a card in the customer row, with at least 1 card matching the suit. A card. An individual card is one that has a value, a domain, and game effect. Number 3, contested customer. A contested customer is one that both teams wish to assist. So in this case, for example, we see that both teams are trying to assist this customer, a 7 of science, with a 4-2-1, at least 1 being a science, and also a 4-2-1 with 1 being a science. Number 4, discard. Discard group cards go into the group discard. So if we were to discard a card, such as this game effect, it would say draw a card and discard a card. We would draw a card and then discard a card, face up. Number 5, domain. So this is one of the 4 suits in the game: information, science, technology, and service. The domain symbols, these are the 4 domain symbols that are used to represent a domain. Exchanging when 2 cards when an effect causes 2 cards to swap places during putting one where the other was. So for example, if an effect were to exchange a card from the top of the customer deck to the group hand, we would put one where the other was. Expel. A card that is expelled is removed from the game completely. Number 9, pick, the act of selecting something, a player, a card, a venture, or a token. Number 10, phase, one of the 6 parts of a round. 11, redraw. Redrawing causes cards to be drawn equal to the specified number in the game effect. Redrawing occurs after discarding cards during the refresh phase. Number 12, refresh. The refreshing phase causes the group hand to be discarded and a new group hand to be redrawn. Number 13, reveal. You would turn over a card to expose them for all players to see. And after the game effect resolves, the revealed cards are returned from where they came, preserving the order they had. So for example, if we revealed 2 cards from the top of the customer deck, we would show them for all players to see and then return them, preserving order from where they came. And number 14, a round is a complete set of operations performed by the players. It's composed of phases. The game is played in a series of rounds. Number 15, score pile, the pile of customer cards that have been previously successfully assisted. Number 16, scored customer, customers that have been previously successfully assisted that were scored by a team into their assisted customer. Score pile, each customer will count 1 victory point at the end of the game. Suit, this is a term that's used interchangeably with domain. The suit is used because of the familiarity people have with traditional cards. So the cards also have the traditional suit and as well as the domain. Number 5, player venture, cards that represent a company that each player may have up to may have 1 venture that they control, and in a 1 to 4 player game, players can have up to 3 cards in their venture. And in a 5 to 6 player game, though, they can only have 2 cards in their venture. Number 6, the last one is the wild card, which looks like this. So a wild card is a card which has an immediate effect and then it's expelled. In rare cases, it's possible that the wild card is drawn or revealed into the group hand. And if so, it's applied as effect and then expelled, and then you redraw a card, replacing it into the group hand. Thank you.